Welcome to the Gaming Bench. Today I'm making an old English pub game called Shut the Box. This is a simple dice game for 2 or more players, or you can play by yourself. If you want to learn more about the rules, history, and strategy of this game, I have another video that goes into depth about that. I'll link in the description below. It seems like there's 2 major kinds of shut the box games. One where you slide little doors to open and close over the numbers, you shut the box, and another that has tabs or paddles that you flip down. I'm building the latter kind. I think it's a little easier of a project, and I find the flipping the paddles down really satisfying. I gotta say, I'm really excited about today's project because when I first got into woodworking 5-6 years ago, I saw a video about this project and I was really inspired to build it. Now, I tried to build it, but I really didn't have the skill at the time to make it work, and there was math involved, which was a problem. So the YouTube channel that inspired me is called Woodworking for Mere Mortals. Steve Ramsey runs that channel, and I've watched a bunch of his projects, and he was really instrumental early on in my woodworking career to give me some tips and pointers and really inspire me to do the work. So I'm hoping that today I can build the project that I could never pull off 5 years ago. So let's get into it. I've already cut out all the pieces. So I'm going to make this out of poplar. So I have the 4 sides of the box. It's going to be a rectangular box. I glued up some 1/4-inch poplar, solid poplar for the top and bottom. And these are the tabs that you'll flip down. And there's a 3/16-inch rod that'll go through the tabs to make them flip. So I cut all this stuff and sanded it off camera because watching people mill lumber on YouTube is super boring. So let's build a box. So I almost started gluing up the box before I cut the dados on the inside of the box sides. This is the kind of mistake I used to make all the time when I was just getting into woodworking. But first, I need to cut these grooves because the panels, the top and bottom, will fit in there, and they'll be slightly inset from the top and bottom of the box. And I really like that look. So I'm going to insert it, I don't know, a little less than 1/4 of an inch, cut halfway through these sides. And then I could have put my dado stack on this, but kind of a hassle. So I'll just make multiple passes until it's fitting the way I want it to. That seems pretty good. It's a nice tight fit. All right, so I have the box just dry fit together so I can take some measurements to figure out the final size for these panels. I glued these up a little oversized. And for some reason, this seems to be the part I always screw up. I don't know why, but I think what I'll do is I'm going to measure the dimensions of the box and then just sneak up on the cut to figure out exactly how big this needs to be. So this is 10 1/4 by 6 2/8. All right, ready to assemble this box. I like to use the method where you put tape on the joints. If you've watched any YouTube videos before, you've seen this 1,000 times, where you just tape the edges and you essentially roll it up, and then you have a box. So put some glue in the joints. Don't need a lot because it's not like this box is going to see a lot of rough and tumble action. So I try to be pretty minimal with the glue, and also I don't want to deal with a huge amount of squeeze out. And these panels are just going to sit loose in the box. I'm not going to glue them in. It's a tight enough fit. I don't need to. All right, true to form, I kind of screwed up these panels. It seemed like the length was a little off, so the box didn't want to quite close up. So I just took it to my table saw real quick and sliced a tiny bit off, and hopefully that will be enough. Put a little clamping pressure here to get it to close up. Ooh, too much, too much. All right, short ride on the struggle bus to get this squared up, but I think it looks pretty decent now. Maybe not perfect, but also this is for me, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. So I'll let this dry for an hour or so and then come back and see where we're at. All right, I'm not unhappy with those miters. Far from perfect, but not so bad. All right, now I need to cut the box open so that it's actually a box. Normally with a box like this, I would cut a shallow lid so that the bottom part was much wider because it's a box. You want it to be able to hold things and you just want a lid on it. But in this case, when the box is open, I want both sides to sit flush to the table. So I need to cut it directly down the center. And this box is 2 5/8 wide, and I can't do that math. So what I'm gonna do is a trick I've seen 100 times from 100 different YouTubers is I'm gonna measure 4 inches diagonally across this, then mark it at the 2 spot, and that should be the center of the box. So now I'll just extend this line and then line it up on my table saw, and then once I set the fence, I'll never have to math again on this project. All right, I set the fence so that the blade was lined up with the mark I made, so I'm just going to run the long sides through. All right, I got this sanded up as level as I'm going to bother with, I think. Again, this is just for me. Huge screw up on this corner right here. You can see it. I won't talk about it. So next, I need to start thinking about these tabs, these paddles that'll fit inside the box. So when up, they'll be like this, and then when you roll the dice and get the number, you can flip them down like this, and they'll be pretty. It's a pretty shallow box, but that's okay because the numbers will be on this side, and you'll roll the dice on this side. So now I need to determine where to drill these and where to drill holes in the side of the box. All right, because of my aforementioned fear of math, I mocked up one of these paddles and cut a little piece of the rod and just kind of positioned it here to make sure that what I'm thinking will work will work. Because I'd be very mad if I drilled a bunch of holes and the paddles wouldn't rotate or something. Okay, took a little more trial and error than I care to admit, but I drilled some holes in the sides of this box. I had drilled a hole in the sample piece, and it works great. And I wanted to do this to make sure that I align this correctly so that it would flip the whole way through. So the next part is I need to cut or drill a hole through each of these tabs. And this is the part that makes me a little nervous. I actually bought a drill press just for this part of the project. Well, that's not quite true. I finally bought a drill press because this was the third or fourth project in a row where I was like, I could really use a drill press right now. So I just bought a cheap one at Harbor Freight, but it'll do the job for this. Made a quick jig to align all of these tabs so I can drill them all evenly with the drill press. I have all the tabs just dry fit in there to make sure they work, and it works pretty good. They're a little stiff. They want to stick to each other, so I'm going to sand down the sides a bit before I install them for real, and then I also want to round over the corners a bit. Okay, this next part is admittedly pretty sketchy, and don't do this at home. I want to put a slight round over on all these pieces so they look and feel more like dominoes than they do square stock. I couldn't figure out a way to do it safely on my router table, and this is my palm router that I have clamped down to my bench, and I'm going to try to run it through. It's a small bit, but my fingers are admittedly pretty close to the blade, so that freaks me out a little bit. But we're just going to go slow and careful and see what happens. Okay, all the skin on my fingers are still intact, so success. I really like the look and feel of these. I'm going to do a little more hand sanding to get them exactly where I want them to be, but I'm really pleased. But still, this was scary. I don't want to do this again. Went over all of these and gave everything a good sanding up to 220 grit. Broke all the edges, and now I'm gonna stain it. I'm using this gun stock, which is kind of orange, but I've kind of fallen in love with it. So here goes. Really pretty pleased with how that stain looks. There's some unfortunate sanding marks that you can still see that no one except me will probably ever notice, so I'm not going to sweat it. All right, the box pieces look really good, and I'll give them 24 hours to fully cure the stain. Now onto these paddles. I was really on the fence if I wanted to keep it just the plain poplar, like it looks, has a greenish tint that I think is kind of cool. But I did some test pieces, and I think I like it slightly darker. And my wife weighed in and she liked the darker one too. So that's what we're going to use. I'm using a stain called Provincial. It's the darkest stain I have on hand. I'll just put it on for a second and then wipe it off. I think we'll give it the look I'm looking for. Those look good. I think that was a good decision using that stain. There was a really subtle grain that ran the whole way across these panels. It's kind of hard to see now, which is a bummer, but I still think I'll like the darker color better. All right, that's all the numbers scribed into the paddles, and now I'm going to paint in the numbers with just regular old acrylic paint. I'm not sure how this is going to work. I don't know if the paint is going to react with the stain at all. The stain should be fully cured. It's been a little more than 24 hours. So we'll see. I imagine it'll take several coats to get a nice opaque number. So I'm just going to use really thin paint and do several coats to get it where I want it to be. All right, that is all the numbers painted on, and you know, looks pretty decent, I think. All the pieces are done. I took the board halves outside and I sprayed them with satin polyurethane, gave it like 3-4 coats. Really happy with how this stain and the satin poly turned out. After I brought this in, I hit it with some superfine sandpaper. This is 1500. I'm always surprised what a difference it makes. That there wasn't much of a tooth to this, but hitting it with that superfine sandpaper really makes it smooth and really nice to touch. Now the paddles, I was going to just finish them with a paste wax, but then I got concerned that the painted numbers, they're going to take a fair amount of abuse hitting this wood all the time. So I hit these with a couple coats of the same satin poly. Now before I assemble it, I do want to hit these paddles with a little bit of this paste wax, just to lubricate them a little bit. I want to make sure that they flip nicely and they don't stick to each other. Because just when I had this mocked up, flipping the paddles and hearing them clack on the wooden board, super satisfying. All right, now I just need to attach the paddles to the box. I have this rod that's cut to size, and I'll just string them through. So I cut this rod so that it should extend halfway through the side of the box. Okay. There we go. So satisfying. All right, so my plan is I cut a little poplar plug. So I'm just gonna cut this down. So they're essentially just tiny poplar dowels that I will glue into the side. Oh, shit. Okay, almost a major catastrophe there. I put some glue into the hole, and when I tapped in the plugs on either side, I saw that there was glue squeezed out on the inside. which would have permanently glued the number 1 and the number 9 paddle in this position, and it would make the game unplayable. So that would have sucked. So what I think I'm going to do is I took it apart, I wiped off all the glue, made sure there was no residue. So I'm just going to try to tap these plugs in and maybe just friction fit will keep them in there because they are pretty snug. That looks pretty good. Bought these nice little hinges online. Really like the look of them, and it wasn't until I got them that I realized they only fold 90 degrees, and I need this to fold 180 so it lays flat, and I bought a bag of 40 of them. So I was able to just kind of muscle them and bend them over and make them fold the way I want them to. So now I'm going to attach them to this box. Learn the hard way. You really want to tighten these down by hand. These tiny screws want to snap. Even using the driver to get them this far is probably a bad idea, but there's only so much patience I have. That's the wrong side. It's supposed to be over here. Ugh. All right. So I've read that the secret of woodworking is knowing how to fix mistakes. So obviously I have 8 holes on the front of this board. I mean, I'm going to have a latch. Oh, you know what? I could have 2 latches. Yeah. I think I can live with that. All right, that is Shut the Box completed. I gotta say, I'm really pleased with the way this turned out. I mean, it's not only super satisfying to knock down these pegs, but I'm really happy with how the box turned out too. Miters are pretty tight. The stain looks really good. I couldn't be happier with it. This is exactly the kind of box and game I really wanted to build 5-6 years ago when I first got into woodworking. So again, if you want to learn more about the history, rules, history, and strategy of Shut the Box, I have another video that goes into detail about that, linked down in the description. And if this is the kind of content you enjoy, I hope you consider liking and subscribing. All right, I'll see you next time on the Gaming Bench.